do you really know who you are? Do you know yourself? Because if you do, then you will know exactly what you need to do, whether it's my business or my music, whatever it is. I'm doing the adult version of what I did and what I wanted to do when I was 4 years old, 5 years old. I had been practicing the Mucusless diet for over 10 years.
Wow.
And had massive amounts of mentorship experience. I had the blessing of the elders. Copywriting should be a part of creative writing.
Hi, and welcome to this new episode of the Lightleaders. Today I'm again with Professor Spira, who's an expert in health and built a successful business and community around his passion and mission for supporting people's health. He's sold over 90,000 books and e-courses, and he will share his best tips with you so you can do the same with your passion and your soul-aligned business. You can also go directly in the chapters that interest you. They are listed at the bottom of the video. I'll share a bit more about you, Professor Spira. You're an author, jazz trombonist, university lecturer, and founder of Mucus-free Life LLC, renowned globally as the leading expert on Professor Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System. Great book. And we've done a lot of podcasts, by the way, more on that topic. Since discovering the diet in 2002, you lost over 100 pounds within a year and overcame numerous health issues, helping hundreds of thousands to adopt the mucus-free lifestyle. And you have published 8 books on the subjects, including the best-selling annotated, revised, and edited edition of the Mucusless Diet Healing System. You run the #1 educational resource for mucus-free living at mucus-freelife.com. So again, there's a lot of other podcasts. People can check in the channel if they're more interested in talks on the diet, in the debates we've had with Lauren Lockman, the conversations with Eli and with Shane Sterling. But today we'll talk about more how you built your business around that passion. My first question to you, Professor Spira, is what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for the sun and was able to get a little sunbathing in today. And yeah, I'm always grateful for the sun.
Amazing. Thank you. And I'd love to have share a little bit of a backstory if people don't know you yet. Before we dive into the more community and business aspect, what is your passion for health? Where did it come from?
So when I was young, I was sick all the time, and I grew up. They put me on pharmaceutical medications. I was taking all kinds of stuff since the age of 7. I was on Celdane and Allegra and just I had daily chronic migraine headaches and really bad hemorrhoids all the time, horrible constipation and bloating, and the list goes on and on. When I was 18 years old, I ended up with a CPAP unit, which is this oxygen mask that you put on at night when you're sleeping. And doctor told me that if I ever stopped using the CPAP unit, that I could die. And before that, earlier on, I thought that it was genetic because that's what the doctors always told me was, well, sickness and illness and disease, it's just in your family. So this is typical. You're going to go through all these things. And when my mom was always in and out of the hospital, so I was raised oftentimes by my grandma and my aunt. When I was 10 years old, my grandma passed away suddenly, and that really devastated me because I didn't see it was coming. I wasn't prepared for that. A week after my grandma passed away, my mother had a massive heart attack and then went in, had a triple bypass surgery. And after that, her health just spiraled downward from there, and ultimately had both of her legs amputated from the knee down. Her feet started to turn black and gangrenous. And then I spent about a year and a half with her in a nursing home, just that kind of environment. And then she passed away. And that whole time, growing up, I spent a lot of time visiting my mom in hospitals and nursing homes. And something inside me told me that this is wrong. This is not how humans are supposed to live. This is not normal. This is not what living is about. And I just really saw the immense suffering and the despair and the loneliness as all these folks that would get shut away in the nursing home somewhere, and the pain in these hospitals. And I just really thought this something's wrong about this. And that put me on a path of trying to learn about and figure out the root cause of human suffering. So it started the root cause of human illness, and then the human suffering in general became what I was really interested in finding answers to. And that put me on a path of reading all kinds of philosophy books and studying many religions around the world and sciences, and anybody that thought they had an answer for human suffering, I listened to what they had to say or read about it. And here and there I would see some good things, but nothing satisfied me. I didn't feel like I'd found the real answer until I read a book called The Mucusless Diet Healing System by Professor Arnold Ehret. And that book was introduced to me by Willie Smart, aka Brother Air. And that just transformed my life, because it's a total paradigm shift in terms of everything that you think you know about your body, everything that you think you know about humans and humanity. It it challenges all of it. It throws a lot of it out the window. And but it made so much sense to me. And so after I'd read that book, I started applying the principles taught in it. And a year later, I'd lost 100 pounds, overcame all those ailments, got off the CPAP unit, threw away all of the medications, and didn't look back. New life, rebirth, and pressed forward from there. And 22 years later, this is be my 22nd year of practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System. I feel like I'm just getting started. There's so much work to be done and progress to be made. And so that's another thing that I'm grateful for. I'm very grateful to be practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Spira. And again, for people who want details, they can check the other interviews we have. But I'm curious, so 22 years later, you say, here we are, you're just getting started. How did that personal healing story turned into a business? Like, did you start first healing yourself, and then did you start coaching your friends, and then professionally? How did it unfold?
Yes, that's a good story. So I will share this real quick for everybody. They can see the before and after. So these were taken a year apart.
Wow.
So that's 300 pounds, and then down to 200, 190, around about there. But so my entrepreneurial origin story really goes to when I was a child, and I loved playing business. So what I do today with just everything, whether it's my business or my music, whatever it is, I'm doing the adult version of what I did and what I wanted to do when I was 4 years old, 5 years old. I used to, one thing, I used to act like I had my own little radio show, and I had a little Fisher Price tape recorder with cassette tapes for people that never heard of that. And I was 4 or 5 years old, and I would just act like I'm a radio host, just talking like I have a show. And I didn't have siblings that I lived with. It was just me. So my creativity had to take front, center stage. And so I would really, create characters and create imaginary friends and all kinds of stuff. And I used to enjoy playing business. That was one of the things. And my aunt actually had bought me, I don't know if I can't call it a game. I call it a toy called My First Business. And it was this this thing that said my first business on it. It was basically just like a little office thing, just with office supplies for kids. And I would act like I'm running a business, and I'd play this stuff. I used to turn the table over in my in the living room, and I put a blanket over top of this little table. It was like a small table, and I would push it, and I would act like I was selling things, and I'd go up to my grandma, and just with imaginary, like I'm handing her something, and she hands me imaginary money, and I give her change, and and so I enjoyed playing business from 4, 5, 6 years old. When I got to elementary school in the 6th grade, my elementary school had a thing called it was the invention convention, but for the year that I did it, they called it the toy convention. And so what you did was you would invent a toy. If you were in this, if you got into this thing, you invented a toy or a game, and then if you won, there was opportunities to do other things. And so I won in my category or age, I won the invention convention. I created a game called Dance Fever, which was like a board game that would be like today, some of those dance games like the Wii and all that stuff. It was a board game version of that where you would use a cassette tape, but that won. And then I also won because not only did you create the game, you actually create a poster presentation with advertisement that basically would advertise your game or your thing. So I got first place for the game and first place for entrepreneurship, which was like a separate, if you did good job selling and you had your stuff in order. And I got selected with a couple other people to go to regional competitions put on by a company called the Kauffman Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that promotes entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship education to young people. So I got selected to go there, and as a part of that, I got taught how to put together a business plan. We actually had to put together a business plan, more marketing materials, and then we would go to the competition. And in that process, we actually went and with a local business owner, went and met with them, and they taught us about just the nuts and bolts. It was like a small business owner locally, and they talked about stuff that they did and the break-even analysis and had the balance sheet and all this kind of stuff. And so I ultimately created this business plan, went to regional competitions, and I got second place in this regional competition for entrepreneurship for my presentation and my game and everything. And that was also when I saw I had a knack for sales, or it was just I was a decent salesperson at a young age. So that was that part. Then in the Boy Scouts of America, I around the age of probably 11, 12, 13, 14, those ages, I used to go, we would sell mulch, like mulch that you would put on your lawn. And in order for me to raise the amount of the money to go to summer camp, I needed to sell a lot of mulch because we didn't have the money to just for me to just go to camp. So I used to go door to door, and this is like I'm 11, 12 years old. When we had our little period, I went door to door knocking. We would have in a baggie, have a little bit of the mulch, and we had like couple little cards and stuff. And I would just go door to door, and I had my pitch where I'd introduce like, "Hi, I'm from Troop 164," and I just had my little pitch down, and I learned. And when you think about that, because oftentimes when young people, whatever you did when you were young, if you did something where you were able to get a lot of repetitions, you really cultivate that particular ability. So I went to hundreds of houses, with thousands by the time I was done. So I got that that ability to read people really well, and that persuasion and just the rhythm of that type of sales. And so then I ended up, when I was 16, I ended up in a men's clothing store as a salesperson. Now, usually they don't hire people until they're 19 or 20 or adult, but they were real impressed with me. I just came in a certain way and just really impressed them. Then I ended up being one of the top salesmen there. I was, I think, second under this guy that was great. And whenever we actually worked together, we used to just we would just really clean up. But so I had all that reference experience, all of that, these different opportunities. And this is outside of my music that I was doing in high school, being an athlete, varsity football player, and athlete.
Spira, what I'm hearing is almost you have that passion for mucusless diet, but the business around mucusless diet was that passion meeting the passion you already have for entrepreneurship, marketing, and sales, right?
Yeah. So what happened was, when I got into the mucusless diet, because I've kind of lived several different lives of different, I've lived like there was a little rock star period life where I'm on the road playing music and being on stage with some famous people, and we were doing all kinds of stuff. So that's a whole, I could talk a whole thing just about music, because that's the fundamental, the fundamental passion was always music. That's the one thing that was always there, music. But then there's all these other passions,
Actually, that's something I would really love to ask you about, because I've been coaching about 60 light workers and leaders of the new earth in the past 4 months as part of an experiment. And one thing that comes a lot is a lot of our types of people, we have many different interests: music, something around business, something around health. And often a challenge for leaders of the new earth to build their business is that they really spread, because they have all these interests. And often some business advice can be, well, focus on that one thing, start to build that one business and make it really successful and profitable, rather than trying to build 4 or 5 businesses at the same time. So you also have all these passions. What did you feel you had to really focus on mucusless diet for business, let's say?
Yeah. So a couple things about that, because so when I started by the time I started mucus-free life, I had been practicing the mucusless diet for over 10 years.
Wow.
And had massive amounts of mentorship experience. I had the blessing of the elders, which is something a lot of people don't a lot of young people in the hustle culture, there's not a lot of discussions about that. Do you have the green light of your mentors and your elders to move forward? That goes back into, ancient cultures and, ancient principles. And so I will say that, because that's very much missing when I look out, because what I see, particularly in the health field, is I see a lot of folks that will get started, but they really don't have the kind of experience and the depth of mastery of that area of expertise that I think would be.
As a parenthesis, that's what happened to me, where I was doing some health coaching, but being like 3 years, let's say, in the raw mucusless diet, I feel like, okay, I want more time for myself before I focus on that. And that's actually why I ended up switching the focus to helping light workers and people who rise the consciousness of our planet.
Right. Because the thing is, it comes down to know thyself. So that principle that different traditions talk about, but people don't really get into that. Do you really know who you are? Do you know yourself? Because if you do, then you will know exactly what you need to do. The green light is there. There's no question. But as long as you don't know who you are, then you're going to be confused. You're going to not really be sure exactly what you should be doing. What should my business be? Or should I go to school? Or so I implore people to get deeper into yourself. Now,
Wow.
my means of doing that is practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System. Because if you really practice it hard in the right way, then it forces you to learn who you are. Because it's going to confront every suppressed emotion that you have, every toxic thing that you and your ancestors ever put in their bodies. You have to deal with all of that, whether you like it or not. And going through that process and on that path of cleanliness, you're going to gain a clarity of your direction. And a lot of what you thought you wanted to do, you realize that that's not what you're supposed to do. And that happened to me. So if we go back to when I first went to college, at that point, I wanted to be a famous musician that would travel the world and be on stages and have millions of people, that whole thing. Then I got into the mucusless diet and I realized that doesn't mean anything. So much of this pop music and this stuff, and that's fine, they do what they want to do, but it's forgotten. It doesn't change anybody's life. It's forgotten in 10 years, in 20 years, if that. Definitely by 50, 100 years, it's gone. Most people can't name what the number one song was in 1952 off the top of it. It's forgotten. Those people, they don't even know those performers. And so I just had that realization, is like, okay, that was an ego based desire. This desire, let me be on stage for the sake of people clapping for me and doing, oh wow, you're great, and that was all ego, as opposed to being on stage because I'm actually bringing something that can help humanity and change the world and change people's lives. That now you have a reason to be on stage. Now you have something to contribute more so than some song about, ooh, baby, baby, you look so good tonight. It's like, no, we have some vibrations that we can contribute to the earth that can stand the test of time. So that is part of know thyself. I learned all that practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System. And dedicating myself to becoming as good of a musician as I could be, and taking that role really seriously. Not the role, I let go of the role of the entertainer concept and moved into the role of the shaman of the community. The musicians back from time immemorial were priests and shamans of the community. They were the healers. They were the storytellers. They were the historians. All of those roles were in the musician, the poet. That's what they did. And so I accepted that role first. So before I got into, okay, what business should I do? I had accepted this role of being a modern day 21st century musician, shaman, kind of in that, or to try to live up to that tradition. And so that put me on a certain path. So when I'm at school, I wasn't, is that at early on, I didn't think that I would necessarily start a business outside of music. And I was getting teaching jobs, and I started teaching at the college level. I was 23 years old. I was the youngest professor on the campus when I taught Survey of African American Music and Musical World Culture. And they had offered me a full-time position that I ended up turning down. And I went to Ohio State to work on my PhD, and ended up getting another master's degree and a PhD in ethnomusicology. But once we got closer to the end of my PhD, I had gotten the download and the direction and the clarity that I've gotten what I was supposed to get out of academia. I'd been there, almost 20 years. And so my destiny wasn't to go be hidden somewhere as a random professor, tenured professor at a college, and where your range of influence is kind of small. You could be a rock star at your school and maybe get published. Very small percentage end up being the professors that get called to be on the CNN and the news and that kind of stuff. And that's a whole racket in a game. But I saw that, I was like, that's not the path that I'm supposed to go down. And around 2010, I started going through, we call it the fall. It's intense period of physiological eliminations. I was 10 years into practicing the mucusless diet. So I started going through really healing crisis, like severe healing crisis is what some people would maybe look at it as. And in going through that, a lot of people would have got scared and they would have tried to give up on the diet or that kind of stuff. But that just reinforced, when I took myself through that process of true healing, of really, it was like a total reconstruction of my entire gland system, and rebuilt my adrenal glands and thyroid, and so just totally rebuilt my body. And so coming out of that, that's where I got this clarity. Was like, you need to create the annotated mucusless diet, these other books, because there's a number of books that are out of print that Professor Arnold Ehret had put out, and I have all of them. You need to, and they had just went into the public domain in 2011. So it was like a timing thing. It was this divine timing where, because if you would have asked me maybe 5 years prior, I thought that I was going to graduate and then go be a professional musician and tour the world for the next 10, 20 years. And then when I was in my 70s, I would promote the mucusless diet to the world and that kind of thing. But the universe has a funny way of letting you know that it's not necessarily what you think you want to do. You need to do what you're supposed to do. And so that's where around 2012, 13, I was like, okay, what I'm going to do, I'm finishing up my dissertation in school, but I'm going to use some of this loan money that I was getting to finish school. I use that as a business loan, just in the way that I processed it, because I could have finished my PhD degree at least probably 2 years earlier than I did. But what I did, and it was a plan. I wrote out a business plan, and I had it all, kind of had the vision. It was coming to me. So I was like, I'm going to take two years while I'm still in this situation with and finishing up school. Take 2 years, and I'm going to build up a business. And by the time I graduate, I want to be living off of the business. And like I said, the mucusless diet, that was, I saw how much of a need that there was for our unique message, because I was seeing so many people, and it's still there, but it was back then, people that would be trying to be so aggressive and do these really aggressive fasts or extended fruit periods with no transition and all this kind of stuff. And I would see people fall off and go back. Back then it was the paleo. Now it's keto and carnivore. Back in the day, everybody was, they would fall off and go to paleo or raw meat diets and weird stuff. And so I was like, okay, people at least need to know there's another path. There's another way to do this that's transitional based. And
thank you, Spira. And if I can pause you for a second there, I'd love to go next into like how you build a business from there. I'd love to share from the story you've shared. There's so many principles and nuggets that I'd love to just pause down here and recap, because I think why you're doing that passion business successfully is you shared you had a personal story of healing. And I think that's really powerful. That can back up your passion for the mucusless diet in general. You shared also that it was your passion. You had a passion for business also. So I think it's beautiful that you have a merging of the passion, the diet, the health, with the also just passion for business overall. And that meeting really helps. I love that you shared that it was a game when you were a child, because from a higher consciousness perspective, we're still children playing a game, right? So I love that you have that approach also. You shared that you had sales training that was really helpful. You shared that you had a patience also. You took 10 years on the mucusless diet before dedicating more of your life to it. You you prioritize knowing yourself. That passion goes into that. Also, having some practices to know yourself that you prioritize. So for some people, it could be meditation. For you, you talked about mucusless diet. Can be different things, but prioritizing this also, and having a plan. So you created that plan. So you receive the signs from the universe. That's almost a more feminine approach, but then that more masculine, intentional. Okay, I have 2 years. I'm gonna make sure I make enough money in those 2 years so I can have the business since I finished graduating. So I just wanted to pause a little bit through the story, because here I've noted so many principles that are super valuable through your story, and I feel could help the listener who wants to also start their own business. Yeah. So now
Yeah.
actually that could be really interested to, that was almost more finding your purpose part. And then it's like how then you're going to be, okay, that's my mission. I'm going to do a business around the mucusless diet and impact millions of people with it. Then how does that part unfold?
Yeah. So prior to all that, if you go, I had been helping people that had started coming to me asking questions about the diet, and and I was really, before was accepting any money, I was basically promoting the mucusless diet all the time. Because
Mm.
and there was a point when I was pretty early on, or within those first 10 years, I would walk up to random people and just start pitching the mucusless diet. And
Amazing, because that's also a great business advice sometimes. Is it what are you already doing for free in your life and turn that into a business? A lot of coaches, for
yeah,
example, they spend hours coaching their friends, so they end up becoming coaches.
yeah, yeah. And I was even I know, so I was I would even I did this thing where I would go and talk to I would talk to women, or your young ladies that just basically impart the mucusless diet with them, and then that was it. That's all I wanted. There was no other purpose. Would talk about the mucusless diet. Then I would show them. I used to have little cards. I just had my whole, because I'm working on my pitch. I'm working on my my rhythm, and I just got a kick out of doing that. That was kind of fun. And but then sometimes it was interesting. I'd end up getting a call later with this one person that became a friend, that she was like, you can't just leave somebody with that information and not call them. And we ended up being good friends. But but having fun with this, and being on the mission of wanting to share this information, because somebody had shared it with me and it changed my life. So I'm like, I'm at least want to expose this information to as many people as possible. I'm Whether people do it or get into it, or that, I remove myself from that, but I do. My goal is to expose this, and to effectively expose this to as many people as possible. So that had been around well before starting the business. And I also learned that I did have a talent for breaking down and explaining the principles of this particular lifestyle. And I did a lot at that whole period, that first 10 years. I mean, I'm studying all kinds of stuff, from how to win friends and influence people, and all the Dale Carnegie. I went through all the Dale Carnegie stuff. I had a public speaking, that kind of thing. A lot of some of the typical self-help stuff. But then I would be studying, read a lot of Plato, Aristotle, Plato's Republic, and all the Aristotle's Politics and Rhetoric. And I had an intense period. Those 10 years before I started the business, I had developed certain level of mastery on a number of, at least enough to be able to get started with what I needed to do. Okay. So I wasn't trying to learn everything on the job, where I know some entrepreneur educators try to teach it that way, where it's like, you just learn as you go, just figure it out, and then you do this and that, and you just you tell everybody that you're gonna like, where they actually will say sell somebody on a course before you created it, and that kind of stuff.
Sell it before you build it.
Yeah, sell it, and I just don't agree.
Which I think is good, still good advice, but
I don't agree with that unless you're a master in your field. If you're already a master in your field, then you can do that. Yeah. But when you're starting off, then I don't agree with that. But
I mean, the logic of it isn't like sell something you have no clue about and figure everything out yourself. I think, to me, the idea is there's something you're really good at and you already know you're good at, but actually through the process of working with someone, the outcome of your course is going to be much better than if you just go in a room and think about what you should do. So when you have clients, let's say when I work with helping someone get a podcast, if I work with people who want to get it, then my online program is going to be so much more relevant to people who actually want to do it. And if I start to think about it and then sell what I thought would be valuable for them, but actually might miss the mark.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. It's like we were saying, it's generally something that you're already doing. You just might not be monetizing it yet, but the skills and the principles and things are there so that, because you're going to learn a whole lot when you get started, but it's just it's that particular, and I'm talking about some of the, where they take people that haven't done any studying, any working on anything, and it's like, okay, start a business and create before the e-course is created, you sell it, and it's that kind of stuff. And so to what I would like it a little bit more in those educational models would be to encourage people to cultivate mastery in their field. And because like, how many books have you devoured in that field? Can you walk up to a stranger and explain to them and talk with them about this topic and break it down in a simple enough way where you can persuade anybody? That it's like, if you can do that, then now you're ready. If you can do that, that's like the Spira test. If you can walk up to a random person on the street and pitch whatever it is that you're doing, or at least be able to explain it, not necessarily get them to buy it, but just get them to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're, and you're comfortable doing that. Now you're in the space where you're ready to, ready to take things to the next level.
And so, Spira, because we're already close to more the end of the episode, I'd love to finish more towards with like, how did you build then the business? Like, what was the order?
Mm-hmm. So around, I had created I started creating a version of the Mucusless Diet Healing System that was like the Bible, the way the Bible was verse, Genesis 1:29, and like every sentence and every paragraph is labeled. And so I did that to the first the first lesson, and then I was like, I don't know if it was like, it's cool, but I don't know if this is necessary. But I went through the whole book and I made all these notes. where I just in the margins where I just would explain things, or if I had questions, I put little questions there, but I had just had this document where I went through the whole book and really did this analysis on it. So, and I had read a number of annotated books, and one of the more famous annotated books that I had read, I had that copy of the Bhagavad Gita, the annotated Bhagavad Gita, and amongst other ones, but that one kind of stuck with me. I was like, what? Well, and then I had annotated Bibles, that kind of stuff. I'm saying, well, the most important books on the planet have annotated versions of that book. Now, I think that the Mucusless Diet Healing System is the most important book on the planet. So why don't I create an annotated version of the Mucusless Diet? And that led me to that, where I don't remember how long it took, but from going from start of trying to put it together, then getting a document ready, then I went, and those were the early days of a Odesk before Upwork bought them out, and so I did my first hiring of contractors had hired editors and formatters, and I used to go on Fiverr. That was pretty new at the time. And so I would get people to do designs. And so it was just, as I was hiring the people that I needed there were things that I couldn't do at that time, digital design, all that stuff. So around probably 2011, 2012, because the paper, this will be 10 years old in November, the paperback edition, but the PDF edition, which I was selling before I put it up on Amazon in 2012, that was just a PDF. So originally I was just selling the PDF. So I had this, but then I also had, so while I was in the years leading up to this period, every time I wrote something, when I was writing back and forth with somebody that I was imparting some kind of information or wisdom, or talking about the Mucusless diet or that kind of thing, I made sure that I saved all of that, because I knew eventually I could create some kind of publishable writings on these things. And so I had compiled all that stuff. And so at the same time as the annotated Mucusless diet, I also gathered all that stuff together and organized the Spira Speaks volumes 1, 2, and 3, so that I would have the kind of the companion. You got the Mucusless Diet Healing System, and then I called my book a lifestyle, not a diet book, but a lifestyle book. And the idea of dialogues, it's that back and forth, the Socratic dynamic, the Socratic kind of the idea of arriving at knowledge and wisdom through the process of question and answer. And so I have a lot of case studies in here. Starts off volume 1 more basic. By volume 3, we're talking about breatharianism and that kind of stuff. And so that was like, all right, I'm gonna put that down. And the other thing, I knew that when I got older, I would think about and write about these things differently, which is true, because if I wrote this today, I would write it quite different, because I'm a different writer today. And but I knew that the voice that I had at that time was important, that I needed to kind of etch that down and have that in time. And so I got started. I was selling those couple books. Then the next, Thus Speak of the Stomach and Definite Cure of Chronic Constipation and Rational Fasting. So those were the ones that I had, and I was selling those. Had bundled those up and selling the PDFs. I had the website. It's just all the stuff that you got to deal with when you have a business. So all that stuff I was learning, because I hadn't taken any courses or anything. I was just literally just figuring out a lot of this stuff as I went along. And then but once I released by the time I had released the paperback edition, I understood how to leverage things with the Amazon, how to sell things on my website. And I had by 2014, I really had everything set up to where I could really go and be a little bit more aggressive. And I started off with the organic traffic, and that's really mostly what I've done the past 10 years has been organic traffic. Now I'm moving into the paid traffic realm. Finally, I've worked on it for a number of years, but now I'm really finally there. But I just really did what you what I did do what a lot of them teach, where you create the content. There's a certain rhythm, you put the content out, and but I always looked at it really from the perspective of an educator, because I was an educator first, and so I came at it through that lens of, okay, sales is really just education. Just it's a different language, it's a different type of education, where if you come into a formal lecture or in a formal course with a syllabus and all, that's one way to learn. That's one type of education. But when you are trying to introduce somebody that's cold to a brand new idea that they've never heard of before, there's a certain way that you got to do that. And that's where, so if there's one thing I'd recommend people get in, study copywriting, do that from an early age. That is, I think copywriting should be a part of creative writing, because I'd studied creative writing in my undergrad and got a creative writing certificate. But once I started getting into copywriting, I'm like, this should be a part of creative writing. You learn poetry, you learn the greats of poetry and prose, literature, but you should also study copywriting, because it's a very unique, it's not just watered down, because that's what some academic people think. They think it's just some watered down, like, oh, it's just simplified, watered down stuff. Like, no, it's very creative. It's a certain type of language and a certain kind of communication that is important for the way we're wired and being introduced to new things. And so that's a little thing. I recommend everybody go study copywriting, get into your Dan Kennedys and Gary Halpers and all the guys.
A book I've been recommended a lot on this is Breakthrough Advertising, so I'm gonna read that.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's so much out there. You definitely, when you find something that resonates with you, and get into it. But I like going through a lot of the some of the classic copywriters. These guys, I really like Dan Kennedy. Just the way he articulates things in written form is, I relate to that I relate to that voice, because it's good to, if you're gonna study copywriting, find somebody that does have a voice that is somewhat like yours, not you don't necessarily have to do that, but I like doing that, where that type of copywriting is in alignment with how I already write. It's not that I write exactly like that, but that kind of expression, the way that those kind of lead lines and hooks are articulated is in line with my it's like when you read it, you don't read it and think like, oh, that doesn't sound like Professor Spira. It's like, no, that sounds like that's me. And so that's a whole other, you basically creating your voice through. I had already created an academic writing voice. I created a creative writing voice. I had created a musical expressive voice through music. Then when it came time to sell in written form with the copywriting, I had to learn another language. And so it is very different. So I encourage people to respect it, to study it just like you'd study anything else. And if you can, if you're able to get passionate about it, that's smart. It's good. and so since I love writing and communication in all forms, whether it's a public talk or a lecture, podcast, whatever it is, I enjoy that dynamic. And so it's really been the past few years where I've really taken copywriting studies seriously and worked on that part of my
Thank
craft.
Yeah, thank you, Spira. I think that that's really important, and I also love how you have all this curiosity, all these passions, and can weave them together. So I know that's a big part of your success too. Sometimes having so many passions can feel almost overwhelming because we don't really know how to niche and what to dedicate our time and focus towards. But is also create that unique blueprint. And we're touching upon the end of this episode for today, but I know you also have like a podcast, a community, the Instagram, and so maybe we'll do another episode around like your current business structures. But I think that was really insightful in terms of how to find your purpose, how to build your um, business around it, and those more like general principle. Let's say, and then there can be strategies that flow into that, and
Yeah,
the school
because
community,
I'm an
whatever.
advocate of insurance. So one thing which that I do agree with that some of the business community folks will encourage you to get get mentors, read the books, find mentors, and connect with them. And really, and really good mentors is going to help you not have to go through everything they went through. So I have a group of people that I mentor, and I'm able to get them right into share. I created a template of my because this could be a whole other business for me. I'm not now. This is like private mentorship kind of things that I got with some people. But I had created a whole template for my my tax thing. My all my books. Because over the years I created and evolved my
Yeah.
books, and whenever I send my books into my accountant, I always praise it, like, oh, your books are the best books that we get. And
Yeah, I
but I
need that
worked
too.
on that over years. But unless you have somebody that's there that's mentoring you a little bit, or you read the right books, you don't know that you can write off a whole lot of the revenue, where you can diminish your tax liability like crazy. That depends on your jurisdiction and where, and blah blah blah. But that kind of mindset, thinking like that, thinking tax avoidance is not illegal. Tax evasion is, don't do that. But tax avoidance is smart business. So putting your affairs in order and thinking about that and structuring those things from early on is massively important. But where do you learn that? So there's a handful of courses. I've really haven't come across a whole lot of courses. There's a couple I've come across where guys will talk a little bit about that and the importance of getting your taxes right and your LLC or whatever, your business structures and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, a lot of guys don't really talk about that unless you get in their masterminds, perhaps. But that's just something to think about, because that gets
Right.
into even more nuts and bolts of
Yeah.
of which I'm passionate about that too. Like, I like all that, where it's a lot of people hate that part of it, but it's like, no, this is part of business. Is you gotta deal with it. But it's better to deal with it sooner than later, so
Yeah.
that you at least, even if it's before you got revenue coming in, you're tracking things. You're in the habit of tracking things. You're in the habit of tracking your mileage and your gas, and if you're on a plane and you go to do business, you can write off that, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why mentors are valuable for that. I like what you shared, also reading the book, getting more education, but also relating to the conversation we had on, the selling before and all this. I'm sure as a mentor, you see some people who feel like they'll never be ready, and what they need to do is to break that imposter syndrome and start actually coaching or start actually creating and selling their stuff rather than doing another course or needing another certification, right?
Well, it depends, because sometimes the apprenticeship system, again, it's something that a lot of young people aren't they're not going after that in the way
Mm.
that my generation maybe did it less than the previous generation, than my brother Air's generation, but I knew that was important. So I knew, and I did a little bit more of that in the realm of music than I did in business until a little bit later. But when you are connected, and a lot of this just depends on the situation. But if you can work as an apprentice under somebody, so if you aspire to be a detoxification specialist, or what, you want to be working under, Dr. Morris, if you can, if you have that type of, if you got that, where is, if that's really what you're passionate about, you want to do, then you fly there and you find out how to, and then that gets into a win friends and influence people social. You got to do that right. You got to make the meetings the right way. But that's a mindset of, instead of like, okay, let me just watch a bunch of the videos and then I'm gonna put a course together. It's like, no, I want to go study under him. If he's the best, I want to go study under him for a number of years and be an apprentice. And he does that where, people come and they'll work in the clinic and get a chance to really see behind, to know more than just, this is what's recommended in a video, or this is what is in the certification program. It's when you get to start developing levels of mastery, you can really merge into the mindset, which is helpful to do when you're with that person that you're learning from. And and so if there's a lot of people that get their start that way. They start their working under, or apprenticing with, or working under somebody, and then there is a time when it's like, all right, go either go do your thing, or help me build this bigger. Because sometimes if somebody's already building something, it's good to go help them keep building it. And maybe that you can find a place in there, and that's, and still, and have your business in there. But instead of just starting something from totally from scratch, now you become part of a collective. You can merge, and that's a bigger discussion and strategy. But that's just to think about, and putting that out there, just to think about things a little differently, because that is, I know the typical, where it's like, okay, you get this, and then you start your business and that kind of stuff. And it's like, but there is a more old school kind of mindset where, you seek out these people. You do, if what was there's, and this is, I think, what Russell Brunson did this in his Expert Secrets book, but he told the story of somebody that wanted this job at a clothes store, and what he did. And this place, he had tried to get an interview there. They told him, no, we're not hiring. No, we don't want you. So what he did, he ended up coming up, and he went and asked them, do you mind if I help you guys fold your clothes every day? And they're like, okay, would you want to be paid? Like, no, I don't want any money. All I want to do is help you fold clothes. And so he would come every day, fold all these clothes, and then be like, all right, hey, take care. And he did an immaculate job. So after like 6 or 7 days of doing this, the manager's like, all right, come here. It's like, all right, we appreciate you. We're going to offer you a job, and then it was like that. So that kind of thing, the service, being of service. How can you serve your community? How can you serve the people that are building something already? How can you help them and be a part of that process, and then build your empire, grow your piece together, and do it together? Because then now you're talking about things that are so much stronger than just individual people with these little businesses. When you start to merge together as a community, and you got multiple people within one community that have thriving businesses, and everything is kind of working together, you know, now we're getting somewhere. You know, now we're getting into something, which would lead us to the discussion on community, which, you know, we
I love that. I mean, that would be my next question. Actually, we're going over time. Let me know if that's fine.
You know, I'm fine. You know, I do my podcast for like 4 hours, so I'm fine.
At the beginning of the show, I was like, how am I going to manage 40 minutes with Spira? But anyway, but actually, there's a question there. I think I'll be the last, but for this one, which is what do you need now for your business?
So I've been working as I'm in a coaching like a coaching program. So I have a coaching program, but I'm in one in a mastermind, and you know, so I practice what I preach.
Classic.
Yeah. Because I want to be coached, just like, you know, Michael J. always do the Michael Jordan example. Michael Jordan, he sought out the best coaches in the world and was coached all the time. So what I'm working on right now is putting together paid campaigns, you know, paid advertising, cold traffic. I feel like I got really comfortable and good at organic traffic over the years. The problem with only relying on organic traffic is that is generally not scalable. You get to a point where you can't, you know, you have your good days and your bad, but it's not scientific in the way that if you put together a good paid campaign and have a good customer acquisition mechanism. There's a word people to write down. A customer acquisition mechanism, get your consistent leads, then that's worth its weight in pineapple and and mangoes, because you can now you can scale. When you have something that converts, you have an irresistible offer, Mr. Hermosi. Now you can take things to the next level.
Hormozy is also taking the direction of prioritizing mainly content to grow his business rather than paid.
Now
right?
Now he is, but not really, because he's got such a thing going. You know, his core business, he's got a whole different level of business model, because he's looking to all he has to do is reach the people that are like, you know, 10 million a year plus, and he's looking to acquire businesses, and, you know, he's got a really interesting model, but it's definitely something that is more on the advanced end of things, and wouldn't relate to everybody that's starting off. You know, he already had made his tens of millions, and then he came back, and that's almost like a passion and a fun thing for him, and he's found out how to leverage it and all that kind of stuff, and he puts out all the free courses, and, you know, this is fascinating model and really great content. You know, I mean, I encourage people to go through all his courses and books and all that kind of stuff. Him, Fladley, and Russell Brunson, that's all the classic guys that are doing it today, that have really good classic content on these models. But
how about podcast interview in the nutrition world? I could totally see you like have little debates with people who have big channels, like who's that more carnivore guy? I forgot, Paul Saladino or things like this. That could be an interesting content strategy.
I've done some of that over the years. I've had I didn't always get on the hugest podcast or some, but I've been on some pretty big podcasts and have that kind of thing. But again, there's, in terms of relying on that as your primary customer acquisition mechanism, is not you can do it, but it's not as scalable and as sustainable. So there is this thing where you do that, you could be putting out content every day. Like I said, I did that. You know, I did the periods where I would put out a YouTube video every day, and I had the structure, the, you know, hook.
I hear you. It's less mathematical.
What's that?
It's less mathematical and predictable than paid ads.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I hear.
and that's, and like I said, it depends on what your goals are and what you want. What some people, you don't want to get lost in the vanity metrics of views and clicks when you don't have people signing up for your newsletter. You're not getting them off of Facebook and YouTube. You know, for as much as possible, you want to capture that, capture those emails. That'd be another recommendation for people. Capture people's information, because you don't control what's going on with YouTube. They can take your YouTube channel away from you tomorrow. You know, you don't control your Facebook. But when somebody gives you their email and gives you permission to contact them, or they give you their phone number, then now you have a base of people that you can communicate with, educate, give offers to, that kind of thing. And so, so in that world, in the organic world, I would say that focusing on building a really good mailing list is primary. That's the priority. Like all of your funnels should be getting people onto that list, and then you can give them your offers, whether it's your coaching offer, or you're selling your books, or whatever it is you're doing. But you definitely want to be fostering that the community, you know.
Yeah, thank you. And one more thing on that businessy topic is, of course, it's really nice to have a really good system of client acquisition that's like replicable and predictable. And one thing that's really nice for business also is recurring income, right? So do you go more into the community? I know a lot of people at the moment, Homozy, the first one, are really into school. Do you have a school community or some kind of
No,
paid
so
membership?
I have a circle, but I'm familiar with School and Sam Ovens and all those guys. And yeah, I mean that's a model that it's working well for a lot of people right now. So that's on my list of, because I have the circle. I'm not monetizing it yet, but that's like, quarter four of 2024. That's on our list of things. That's going to be a back end offer. But yeah, no, I agree with that. If you're able to get the, I don't know about, I know that they're at this point, there's teaching people to start off with that, and we'll see. I don't have a yay or nay on that. I'm skeptical that that's a sustainable way to enter in, where you take somebody that, again, doesn't necessarily have a whole bunch of mastery, but because I've seen them pitch this as they're really trying to sell school, but they'll tell people, this is the new way. You don't have to worry about emails and email lists and funnels and that stuff. Just invite people to your school community, and then you get enough people on there, you can start selling them on memberships and that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know if that's the best initial thing to do, but we'll
I agree,
see.
actually.
That's because it's a
I,
little newer of a model
I,
that's getting popular.
Yeah, I agree. I've been coaching coaches also, and often I find that it's almost like community comes once you found your product market fit and what
Mm-hmm.
you really want to do, because it's more complex. And so a lot of people start a community for something people don't really want. Well, when you've done coaching, high ticket coaching, you've sold offers for a few $1,000s, and you know people really want that, and you got your messaging and you're able to help them, then you start the community. That makes much more sense to me. So
Yeah.
for example, in your
Yeah.
case, I know it totally makes sense,
Yeah.
but for
Yeah.
beginners, maybe not as much.
Yeah. 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 That's kind of how I feel about it. But I'm watching. I'm watching what some of the younger people are doing with that model. It's interesting to see what they're doing.
Yeah, Ted Car also in the more raw vegan fruitarian community is doing that, which is interesting. Spira, let's wrap it up for today, and we can always do another one. Do you have a last share for today?
Yeah, just it's all about, for me, freedom and peace. Those are my two guiding principles of my life, is freedom and peace. So entrepreneurship fits right there, and the freedom and then peace. I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of peace as long as I got freedom. Freedom is non-negotiable. So I'd rather have the periods, though you have these periods where you do have to grind, you do have to work really long hours, and you're focused on your stuff, and you're doing what a lot of people aren't prepared to do because of their societal programming. But it feels great to get through that and to get to the other side. And so there is a lot of mindset and that in there. So I definitely encourage people to go after your freedom, go after your peace, whatever that is in your case, whether it's, building a community, building a family, cleaning yourself up, trying to transform your physiology, whatever it is for you, that's your goals, go after it. Just put that out there, and don't take no for an answer. Don't worry about things or excuses. It's like, if you get that clarity, then of course I recommend, Mucusless Diet, clean yourself up, clean out your colon, get the slime out of there, and the clarity is going to come with that. But yeah, once you get to that space, you stay there, stay in that freedom, stay in that peace, and do whatever you need to do to be able to take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, your family, and put together a plan, organize your life, organize yourself with your colleagues, your friends, your family, your community. Get organized, get educated, get clean, and know thyself, transform yourself, really understand how and why you're here. What are you supposed to bring to bring to the table? What are you going to contribute? What were you brought here to contribute? And cultivate that, develop that. And then when the time is right, you will be called to contribute. That's the thing. You're going to be called. You will be put in a position where it's time for you, whether you think you're ready or not. You will be standing on stage with the microphone in front of thousands of people, where you're going to be in a situation where it's on you to do what you're supposed to do. And so be ready, be prepared, and don't be, as Brother Eric says, don't be scared if it gets too real. Be ready to do what you need to do, and contribute to the history of humanity. Make your mark.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brother Spira. I hope to that. And thank you for your time. Thank you to the listener also. Much love.
All right. Thank you. Peace, love, and breath.